Learning to drive starts long before you actually know how to drive. It starts with sitting in the passenger seat, watching somebody casually pilot a giant metal box through traffic while sipping coffee and changing the radio. From the outside, it looks ridiculously easy. They turn a wheel, press a pedal, and arrive somewhere. Meanwhile, you're convinced they're secretly performing calculations that would impress NASA. For years, driving feels like a superpower reserved for other people. The people who can just decide they want a burger at 11 p.m. and somehow appear at a burger place 10 minutes later. No planning, no buses, no begging for lifts, just pure freedom. Eventually, that freedom becomes irresistible. You stop dreaming about having a license and start obsessing over getting one. Suddenly, every car you see feels like a reminder that you're still trapped. Every bus stop feels like a personal insult. And so begins the journey. The first lesson is always a shock. You open the driver's door expecting a car. What you find instead is the cockpit of a commercial airliner. There are buttons everywhere. Dials, levers, mystery symbols. At least three controls that could either activate the headlights or eject you into low Earth orbit. Then comes the moment you've been waiting for. The car moves, barely. The speed is somewhere between walking pace and a particularly motivated tortoise. Yet somehow your brain reacts as if you've just launched a rocket. Your hands lock onto the steering wheel. Your shoulders rise to your ears. Your instructor calmly says, "Relax," which is exactly the sort of advice that never helps anybody in human history. The next stage is pure paranoia. You know enough to drive. Unfortunately, you also know enough to realize how much there is to worry about. Every pedestrian appears to have a secret mission to step into the road at the worst possible moment. Roundabouts become mythical creatures. You hear stories about them. You study diagrams of them. You approach them with the same caution medieval sailors used when encountering sea monsters. A simple turn takes so much concentration that by the end of it, you feel like you've completed brain surgery. But slowly, something strange happens. You get better, not dramatically, not in some movie montage where inspirational music plays. One day you simply realize you've been driving for several minutes without actively thinking about every tiny movement. The steering happened automatically. The gears happened automatically. Nobody screamed, nobody grabbed the dashboard. That's progress. Then comes the driving test, an event somehow capable of compressing 6 months of anxiety into 30 minutes. The examiner climbs into the car carrying a clipboard. Immediately, they gain the power of an ancient judge deciding your fate. You become the safest driver who has ever existed. You indicate so carefully that nearby drivers assume you're teaching a seminar on signaling. You stop at junctions with such dedication that local wildlife begins nesting nearby. Time itself slows down. Minutes stretch into centuries. Entire civilizations rise and fall while you're waiting for the examiner to say something. Then somehow it's over, and you've passed. This is where people think the story ends. In reality, this is where the dangerous part begins. Because now you're unsupervised. The first solo drive feels incredible. You're finally alone. No instructor, no advice, no emergency brakes sitting beside you like a loaded weapon. Just you and unlimited freedom for about 5 minutes. Then you realize you're responsible for literally everything. If you get lost, that's your fault. If you miss a turn, that's your fault. If you accidentally drive into another country, that's also your fault. Still, it's amazing. You start looking for excuses to drive, any excuse. Need groceries? Drive. Need a snack? Drive. Need absolutely nothing? Perfect. Let's go for a drive. Then your friends discover you have a license. This transforms your life overnight. You are no longer a human being. You are now public transport. Your phone fills with messages that somehow all mean the same thing. Can you drive? Suddenly you're organizing trips, collecting people, dropping people off, and somehow becoming responsible for everyone's social life. And honestly, you love it. For a while, being the driver feels cool. You're the captain, the navigator. At least until 4 different passengers start giving directions simultaneously and somehow all disagree with each other. Then comes the confidence phase, the phase every driver experiences, the phase every driver denies experiencing. By now, you've survived enough journeys to become convinced you're exceptionally talented. You start developing opinions about cars. You learn words like horsepower and torque, and immediately begin using them despite having only a vague understanding of what they actually mean. Every tunnel becomes an opportunity for dramatic engine noises. Every empty road becomes the opening scene of an action movie. In your head, you're no longer commuting. You're competing. You imagine mysterious rivals. You imagine cinematic camera angles. You imagine yourself sliding perfectly around corners while orchestral music explodes in the background. For a brief period, you genuinely believe you're one lucky break away from joining the Fast and Furious franchise. This is the Tokyo Drift stage, the stage where confidence reaches the moon while actual skill is still waiting for a connecting flight. Then the years start passing. You drive more, you see things, you witness drivers eating breakfast, applying makeup, arguing with passengers, and apparently solving complex philosophical problems all at the same time. You survive traffic jams that seem visible from space. And gradually your priorities change. The fantasy of being a racing driver fades away. You stop caring about arriving 30 seconds earlier. You stop imagining dramatic race scenes. You stop pretending every journey is the final lap of a championship. Instead, you discover a new goal: smoothness. The true final boss of driving. The coolest driver isn't the one flying around corners. It's the one whose passengers fall asleep. The one who parks effortlessly. The one who makes driving look so easy that nobody notices they're doing anything impressive. Eventually, you reach the final stage, the stage where driving becomes completely normal. The thing you once desperately wanted becomes just another part of life. You get in, start the engine, drive somewhere, and barely think about it. Sometimes you'll remember those early lessons, the sweaty palms, the roundabouts that once felt like giant spinning death traps, and you'll laugh. Because the version of you gripping the steering wheel with absolute terror could never imagine this feeling. And somehow that's better than all the fantasies, because freedom stops feeling like an adventure. It simply becomes your everyday life. Different destination, same main character,